Hello, you guys. How are you? It's good to see you. Happy Tuesday. It is cold. Yikes on bikes. I was not ready for this Texas cold. I forgot. My body was like, girl, what are you doing? Let me say hi to you guys. Hey, Jenny, good to see you. Preschool Granny, RJ Guess. Hello, Irene. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. I'm so glad everybody is here. I hope you guys are having a fantastic Tuesday. So tonight we're gonna we're gonna go backwards. Hey Megan, hey Neat Noodle, hey Jennifer, hey Cerebellum, Hippie Chick, Jennifer, Neat Noodle. Good to see you guys. I don't know if I said hi to Megan. Hi, Megan. I can't remember. I'm not feeling all that great either. I had a stuffy nose and it burns when I breathe. I'm a mess. Okay. But I don't think I said hi to Hippie Chick. Hi, Hippie Chick. If I missed you, I'm so sorry. Okay. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to go backwards. Okay. Where we stopped yesterday was Tabitha was about to talk about she was talking about her personal, like identifying information, okay, like her social security number and stuff like that, and how Jake had asked her for this type of information. Hang on just one second, you guys. All right. It's night time for my little chicky nuggy pot pie, and I had to say goodnight to her. So I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, okay. So Jake had asked her for her personal information on her wedding night. So what I thought we should do is go all the way back to the beginning of her testimony so that you guys can hear how they got together in the first place and how the lies started. So that's what we're going to do. I've got it all ready to go, time stamped everything. Also, I'm hoping we get through it tonight, this first part up until where we started yesterday. And then that way, let me speed her up a little bit too. We can just pick up right where we left off. Because if I remember correctly, and I think that I do, remember how Tabitha testified and how when it was her turn to be cross-examined, or when it was the defense's turn to cross-examine her, how George's defense attorney went at her for being on medication and potentially being bipolar. Well, if I'm not mistaken, I think the same thing happens with Beth. And I don't think that I am. I don't think I'm mistaken. I think that is exactly what happened. And I want to say to Irene, I'm grateful I'm glad I can be a distraction to you. And I'm so sorry that you guys are watching for fires. You know how scary that can be. And I'm so sorry for that. But I'm glad that you're here tonight, and I'm glad that I can be a distraction for you. And I think that tonight's testimony is going to be particularly interesting because we're going to go back to the beginning and find out how Jake and Beth got together, a little bit about her background. And I think that's important also because it helps refresh me and my memory for Billy's trial. Also, we've been talking about the family dynamics, and I truly do believe that Angela raised her sons to be able to spot vulnerable women. So anyway, without further ado, let's get started. She's just been called to the stand. just been sworn in, and they're going to start asking her questions. All right, here we go.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Nervous?
I said this before, we get that a lot in that particular chair. So we'll just take this slow, and anything that you don't understand or is a confusing question, just let me know that, okay? Can you please state your name and spell your last name?
My name is Elizabeth Armour. My last name is A-R-M-E-R.
Okay. And Ms. Armour, can you tell us how old you are?
I'm 29.
Hey, Keschick, good to
And
see you,
are
babe.
you married?
I am not.
Okay. Do you have any children?
None living.
Okay. And do you currently live in Ohio?
I do not.
Okay. Are you employed?
Yes.
And can you tell us, did you ever live in Ohio?
I lived in Ohio for 3 months.
Okay. And do you recall what year that was?
2018.
Okay. And can you tell us, prior to living in Ohio, where did you live?
Before living in Ohio, I lived in Alaska.
Okay. And can you tell us how long you lived in Alaska?
It was about a year.
Okay. And can you tell us what drew you to Alaska?
So I grew up in Amish Mennonite community for most of my teen years, and because of that, I did not have a high school education since they only go to 8th grade. And so friends of mine from the same road that I lived on, that I had kind of grown up with a little bit, we're working with a church there in Alaska that had like a parish school. And so they had offered to help me get my high school education because I was interested in pursuing a more standard kind of lifestyle.
Okay. And you said you lived in an Amish Mennonite community. Can you tell us where that was?
It was in Central Tennessee in a little place called Pleasantville, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you tell us how long you lived in that community?
7 years.
And that was immediately prior to you going to Alaska, correct? Or not?
No, it wasn't. I had stayed with family for a few months and then went to Alaska.
Okay.
Doesn't it neat? Neat Noodle says, that explains a great deal about her. Actually, it does. I had forgotten this part as well. And I think that it not only does it explain a lot about her, I think it explains the soft spot, or maybe a more appropriate way to put it would be, I think that it might explain what she saw in Jake. I think that when she saw him as a single parent, and if I'm not mistaken, I do think that they did tell that. I think they did. I think they were, honest is not the right word because it wasn't honest. I mean, I do think that they said that Hannah, which is Jake's daughter's mom, I do think they said that she was murdered. So here she is, not having had children, but none of them are living. And Jake's daughter is motherless, and she probably felt like the fates had aligned. She wanted to be a mom, and Jake and Hannah's daughter had lost a mom and needed a mom. And I think that might be why some of the red flags that she saw, I think that she kind of ignored those. And so, yeah, she just seems so naive. All right, here we go.
And you indicated that there was a family that offered to assist you or facilitate that pursuit of getting a high school education and what you described as a more standard way of living, correct? Okay. And can you tell us, did they in fact help you?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And did you live with them?
I did. I rented a room from them.
Okay. And was this a family, or describe to me who the individuals were?
So it was a family. You said describe the individuals. I'm not sure.
Yeah, just like, mother, father, children.
Mother, father, and children. Yes.
Okay.
Young children. Their older children were married and living on their own.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said that you knew them prior to that time? That they had lived near you when you were in the Amish Mennonite community, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I must confess, I don't know a whole lot about the Amish community, and I don't know a whole lot about the Amish Mennonite community. The only thing that I know, and this is kind of embarrassing, but is from that TLC series where they had groups of individuals either from the Amish community or the Amish Mennonite community who no longer wanted to live that way anymore, and they followed them around the reality show. And you can't see me, but air quotes. They followed them around and documented their journey. That's really kind of all that I know. I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to the Amish community and Amish Mennonite community, so I'm not exactly sure. But I do know just from watching that show and from listening to the participants describe their life prior to leaving, it's pretty strict. So,
And did you in fact pursue?
hey Rachel,
your
good
high
to
school
see you,
education
babe.
while you were there?
I did.
Okay. And did you obtain a GED?
I did.
Okay. And did you also work while you were in Alaska?
Yes, I worked for Peninsula Internal Medicine.
Okay. And did you also go to church while you were there?
I
Did you
did.
attend a church?
Yes, I
should
did.
say. And can you tell us what church that was?
The name escapes me. It was some fundamental Baptist church. I don't remember the name right now.
Where in Alaska was it located?
Kasilov, on the Kenai Peninsula.
Okay. And how did you come to start attending that particular church?
So that particular church was the church that my friends from Tennessee were attending, and that is the church which had the school as part of it, and the teachers at that school were willing to give me classes after school to help me get up to speed with GED, and so I was going there just, because my friends were.
Oh, did you, Rachel? Let me check it out.
And
Thanks, babe. I appreciate
Were you
that.
fairly involved with the church above and beyond getting your GED?
I worked in the nursery sometimes, and I sang in the choir because I like to sing. I helped one of the teachers with like a Christmas program the church put on.
Okay. All right. While you were there and attending that church, did you come to learn of or know some individuals known as the Wagner family?
I did.
Okay. And can you tell us what was your first encounter with one or more of them? Sorry.
I'm sorry. So my first memory of the Wagners was Jake and Angela, maybe the whole family, but I just remember Jake and Angela and the children walking into church, and I remember thinking they were a couple with a child.
Okay. And did you have any interactions with them at that time, or was that just an observation?
It's just an observation.
Okay. And then was there another time where you had another awareness of one or more of them?
So my next memory of the Wagners was that I had come out of the nursery for taking care of the children, and I looked down the hallway, and it looked like Jake was at the other end of the hallway kind of noticing me, and I remember feeling nervous, but I didn't really have experience with any kind of dating or anything like that, so I thought maybe I was attracted to him because it was just an intense feeling.
Okay. And did you have any interaction with him at that time, or was that the extent of that?
That was the extent of that.
Okay. And then what was your next encounter or interaction?
So the next thing I remember is Jake reached out to me through Facebook and wanted to talk with me, and I think he even asked me out through Facebook, and I told him I was not comfortable going out with somebody who I didn't know.
So what happened next?
So he made a point of introducing himself to me personally next time I was at church and wanted to chat with me in the gym.
Okay. Now let me just say this. I kind of used to live by the motto that a stranger is a friend you haven't made yet. Okay. After like really, 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 really getting into true crime, I no longer have that motto. I am all about stranger danger, keep your circle small, all the things. But um, it seems to me that Jake just zeroed in on her immediately, number one. And not that she's not a pretty girl, she is a pretty girl. It just feels like the only way I know how to describe it is the way that a hyena knows which caribou or antelope is injured or wounded. It's the same thing. That it's they can just sense it, and I was trying to think of an analogy because at first I was going to say a lion, but I don't really think of Jake as a lion. A hyena would be probably more apropos. So, yeah. Hey, anaphylaxis, good to see you. Good to see you. I dropped my email link in the um, chat, Rachel. So it's weird that it's not in there. That doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's quite possible that who knows what happened. You know how email is. You got it. You sent it to blindjusticepodcast@gmail.com. Maybe there's like a little weird spelling error or something. I don't know. But I'll look again. I'll refresh it and see because I don't see it in there, babe. But yeah, just keep. But I do. I think that I think that he could sense something in her, the way that a hyena can sense an injured antelope.
And did you in fact chat with him in the gym?
I did, and yeah.
Okay. And from there, did you begin dating or seeing one another?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Hold
And
the
can you
hold
tell
the
us-
phone. Literally, I went to go refresh it. It's right here at the top, but it says 8:19 p.m. So thanks, Google, for making me look dumb and incompetent. I love that for me.
During that time,
I got it, babe.
what
Thank
kinds
you.
of things would you do?
Sometimes we would go out and get meals just from local, I want to say like fast food restaurants. I remember getting ice cream from Dairy Queen.
Oh,
I think we
Jake,
went for
you
walks,
wooer.
and we would sometimes just go for a drive.
Okay.
How
And can
could
you
she
tell us,
possibly resist?
Did you come to know who his daughter was?
Yes.
Okay. Would she sometimes be present when you would do these various things with Jake?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay. And if she was with you, do you recall any activities that you did when she was present?
Well, for example, the first time he was at the gym, she was there and we were playing around with balls, just tossing them back and forth. Sometimes when we would go for walks, she would be there and maybe we would play in the snow. She was there sometimes when we went to get ice cream.
Okay.
Now, look, I'm just fixing to say what everybody's thinking here, okay? There's nothing wrong with this girl, and this has nothing to do with her. It's not personal to her, and it's not directed at her. But I have always had an issue with people who bring their children around people that they're dating too soon. And I think that I almost wonder if part of the reason that Jake honed in on her is because Elizabeth might have been looking sweetly or something at his daughter. The way that you see, people who enjoy children, being around children in a healthy way. I'm not a creeper way, but like, well, a kid might speak to them, and you can tell when a person actually enjoys being around children because they will hear a child speak to them immediately and respond. Some people don't pay attention to children at all, even if the child is trying to get their attention. And I suspect there was something that very innocuous that probably hardly anybody would know, but because Jake is a hyena, he noticed it. Yes, that's what I think. Yeah. Nevertheless, I still don't like it when people bring their children around potential romantic partners too soon. Even in a friend situation, even if it's not a romantic situation, I'm one of those people that's really leery. Like, it's hard to get into my circle. It's even harder to get into my circle with my children, and they're grown. Ooh, a brownie just sounds delicious. Yeah, I just think it's dangerous. I think that um I think that in the long run, it sets a bad example for the children in putting up boundaries. It's it's okay for children not to want to hug people. It's not rude to not want to hug. And I think sometimes as adults, um, we forget those things, and it's important that we teach our children, I think, that personal space and healthy boundaries are very, very important. And I think that starts in very small ways.
And as far as the other members of his family, um, what were your observations as far as who would come to church and the frequency of the various individuals?
So normally, if they were coming to church, Jake would come. Sometimes he would bring Sophia. Sometimes Angela would come with Bullvine. And I think I remember George and Billy coming maybe twice.
George and who?
Billy.
Okay.
Oh, Billy ain't want to get too religified. Or George. He just wanted a little
Was there a
religification.
point where you learned that there was some negative information regarding Jake and his family?
Yes. So shortly after the Wagners started coming to the church, the pastor of the church stood up basically in front of the church and said that he had known them in Ohio and that there was some kind of news story out about them, and that they had been bothered by the news, and that because they'd been bothered by the news, they moved to Alaska, and that we should not really pay attention to the news about them and just welcome them into the community. Yeah.
Listen, always pay attention to the news, okay? My opinion is pay attention to the news and keep your side eye open, always, and trust your gut. I'm not saying rush to judgment, but I would say my advice would be pay attention to what the news says and then just be like your girl Bindi. Take a wait and see approach. Just watch them from afar and see if anything stands out to you. You know what I mean? Bless her heart. I mean, I understand pastors and wanting to welcome them to the community and everything like that, but I think a much more realistic approach would be your girl Bendy Lou's advice. But just so you know, I'm also a heathen. So I wouldn't be giving out religious advice, just, safety tips, as it were.
And was that the first indication you had? Had you heard these news stories prior to the pastor talking about them?
No.
Okay.
I don't watch TV.
Okay. And did you also ask, or did Jake offer an explanation of it as well?
He did.
Okay. And what did he describe for you at that time?
He said basically what the pastor had, that his family had been hounded by the news media, that there was a scandal where he grew up, that his, I think, ex-girlfriend had been murdered, and that people were putting him under suspicion because he had dated her, and that was why there was the news story out.
Okay. And did you more or less accept those explanations from the pastor and from Jake?
I did, because the family I was living with was ex-law enforcement, and so I talked with them about it, and they said that basically if there had been any truth to these stories, they would have already been arrested since it had been 2 years' time.
Okay. Can you tell me?
I mean, I can see how they might have that opinion, but I also can't, if they're law enforcement, I also would think that they would say, be cautious because quite frankly, there's no statute of limitations and it's statute. Yes, I'm looking at you, Tasha Lynn. It's not a statue, it's a statute of limitations on murder. And with complicated cases, as we know, it can take 2 years to build the case. So they gave her some really crappy advice.
During those early times when you were first dating or doing various things with Jake Wagner, did you meet his parents or his brother during that time?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question?
Yeah. When you were, I guess, during your time in Alaska, did you meet the rest of Jake's family? And if so, at what point?
I think I've met the family about twice. Once before he and I got married, and once after. The time before, they were at his house, or they were all together at the same house. He was sort of introducing me to them, I believe.
Okay. And prior to that, did he describe to you, or did you talk about anything about his family, or describe what did you believe the living arrangements to be, etc.?
So Jake had told me that his family was renting a house from him, but that he did not have good relationship with them, and that he basically didn't spend any time with them if he could avoid it, that they weren't on good terms, and that they weren't really part of his life, but he had rented some area to them because they were like on hard times, kind of.
Okay.
What a lying liar face who tells lies. I don't really have anything to, like, he's trying to low-key not claim them, bruh. Stop it. I'm over Jake and the lies. My goodness. For real, Jake, that's what you told this girl? I don't know why I'm surprised. I mean, he's a murderer, so of course he's a liar. And a terrible liar. Like, that lie doesn't even make sense.
So you met them one time before you got married. So can you tell us about that? At some point, did your relationship with Jake become more serious?
So when I met them, basically what I remember from going to their house was that everybody was yelling. That was my impression, that everybody was yelling.
Okay. And can you tell us who all was present during that time, during that visit?
It was Angela, Bovine and Sophia, Jake, and Billy.
Okay.
Oh, and George.
Okay. And at that point, did you learn that Jake actually lived with them all in that house, or did you know that at that point?
I think I did find that out at that point, yeah.
Okay.
I sped it up, Rachel. I have to.
Well, just like was really angry and stressed, and that they were all shouting. I hadn't really heard people shout that loudly in my life. And I remember Jake saying that they were stressed and that, everybody was stressed.
Okay. And can you tell us, was there a point where your relationship got more serious with Jake?
9 months after I met him, he asked me to marry him.
And can you tell us what was the initial plan as far as what you anticipated the length of your engagement to be?
I'm going to answer RJ and then I'll rewind and we'll hear the question better. Okay, so RJ says, apologies for random question. I am catching up. Was Angela charged with anything? She was. And I probably should have went ahead and Googled this, but for whatever reason, it's completely escapes my brain. What it is that she was charged with. I'll get back to you, RJ. I'm so sorry. My mind just went, it was at the tip of my tongue and then poof, it just went right away out of my brain. Let me rewind this. And then at the next time that it's a good time to take a break, I'll answer it. I'm so sorry.
And can you tell us what was the initial plan as far as what you anticipated the length of your engagement to be, etc.?
Oh, well, at first he said that we would be engaged at least 2 years to give us time to get to know each other, which I was comfortable with at the time.
Okay. And did that change?
Yes.
How did it change?
So Jake kept changing the timeline. So initially he said we would be engaged for 2 years, and then as time went on, he kept giving reasons why. Oh, well, we have to move the date up. Oh, we have to move the date up. And he just kept doing that over and over and over and over. And, here I am in the middle of making wedding plans, and then suddenly I have to move, and I'm busy and trying to manage everything. And he just kept moving it up, 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 until eventually it was only 1 month after we.
And ultimately, what was the reason as to why it had to be that time?
He said that he was moving and that, I could basically either break it off or come with him.
And where was he moving to?
I was told that he was moving to Missouri.
Okay. And what was your understanding in regards to what the rest of the family was doing as well?
So what I was told was that we were going in Missouri, that we were going to raise certain kinds of cows and I think pigs also, and that they were going to have a house on one end of the property and we would have one at the other end of the property, which was very common where I grew up.
Okay. And so your understanding was the whole family, Jake, George, Angela, Billy, the grandchildren, were going to move to one piece of property, but on that property there would be 2 different residences.
Correct.
And who would be in each of the residences then?
So my understanding was that Billy and Angela and George would live in one house, and that Jake and I and Sophia would live in another house.
Okay. RJ, it is, she pled guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and got 30 years. And it was conspiracy and I think gun charges too. So I looked up the article and the article just says her role. It doesn't say specifically. Let me go back and get a different article. I don't even know why I pushed pause for that. All right, here we go.
And did you also help them in packing up their belongings prior to your departure from Alaska?
I did. The day before they left, I went to their house and they were packing things into a trailer, and they basically asked me to watch Wolfgang and Sophia while they were packing things, which I did. And I think I remember carrying some things into the trailer myself also.
Okay. And can you tell us about your wedding?
Okay. Okay, so Angela pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and aggravated burglary. That's what it was. She was sentenced to 30 years in prison and will have to register as a violent offender when released. There we go. Burglary and conspiracy. Okay, here we go.
Where did you get?
I got married in a house. It's very beautiful.
Okay. And who that you knew was present for your wedding?
So the family that I lived with, their father was a pastor, a missionary to many different countries, and so he actually officiated my wedding. So I knew him, and then I had a bridesmaid with me whom I had known, and one brother of mine.
Okay. How many brothers do you have?
I have 7 brothers.
Okay. Any sisters?
No sisters.
And how was your wedding day?
It was fairly calm, I want to say. It was nice.
Okay. And how were Angela and George and Billy on that day of your wedding?
Angela was like playing with the children, being a typical kind of grandmother, getting them cake and feeding them. George and Billy kind of sat off in a corner, skulking, if I remember probably, just kind of arms folded.
Can you tell us, did you have a honeymoon?
Let me just say this. How messed up is that? Listen, now I get it. Okay. I can understand why George and Billy would be like, bruh, is this dude serious? Is he really going to get married? Look what we just had to go. Look what we just did for this fool. And yet he thinks, I can understand. Okay. But could you not just put on a game face just for the day? I mean, could you act like you have some home training? Even if you don't actually have home training, surely you've seen people with home training like on TV. Couldn't you just emulate their behavior? Bruh. Absolute freaking heathens. Here we go.
Okay. Can you tell us, on your wedding night, where did you stay?
I stayed in a local hotel.
Okay. And just you and Jake?
Just Jake and I.
Okay. And can you tell us what happened on your wedding night?
So, since I grew up Amish, basically, I wasn't actually Amish, but I grew up in that kind of lifestyle, that community, very similar lifestyle. I hadn't dated anybody and didn't have any experience with men. And so I had requested, in no uncertain terms, that not consummate marriage on that night, which Jake had agreed to, but did not honor. And afterwards, almost immediately, while brains are foggy, so to speak, he asked me for my personal information.
Okay. And when you say he asked you for your personal information, what kind of personal information are you talking about?
My bank account access numbers, my social security card numbers, my phone passcode, my telephone passcode, telephone, social security, bank account. Oh, and at the same time, he also synced my phone with his so that he could see all of my calls and texts.
Now, let's unpack this for this poor sweet girl. She was inexperienced in every sense of the word. She asked that she remain inexperienced. So that's a high pressure situation, okay? At any point. But particularly on a wedding night, okay? And of course, he didn't honor her wishes. And those are her words, not mine. I don't know exactly what she means by that. And I don't actually remember because I've probably blocked it out in my brain if they go into more detail about what that specifically means. But after the horizontal mambo is done, this fool is over here not getting up. There's no cuddle. There's no cigarette after. He's talking about, let me see your phone. I'm going to sync my phone with your phone. Let me get your bank account information. Let me get your social security number. Let me get your passcodes to all the things. Let me get your bank account. I need your routing number. Man, I am like, bruh, this poor girl. This poor girl. I don't know if that's what she's saying,
Did he
Neat.
also,
I'm kind of thinking, but I don't know. And I don't want to say
did you also
yes.
have to sign agreements prior to the marriage or at any time?
Yes, I remember Angela and them asking me to sign a paper that basically, my understanding was that it was to keep me from trying to get custody of Sophia in the event of a divorce.
Oh
And
my
In the
God.
event of a divorce.
Okay.
So these bootleg devils rejects, right? They don't have anything that would, and I'm talking about like any type of assets, right? They don't have anything monetary. They don't have any value, anything with monetary value. They don't own anything, right? So they make her sign some weird ass prenup that's basically, you're not going to get custody of a child that's not biologically yours in case Jake and you divorce. These people are a freaking piece of work, I swear. Every time somebody testifies and they say something new, and this isn't even new. This is like the second or third time I'm hearing this, is I feel like I actually went over this testimony another time before. And like when the trial was actually going on. And I'm still like, jaw on the floor. Here we go.
And do you recall when you were asked to sign that?
I don't remember the date, but it was before marriage.
Okay.
Or after. Oh goodness, I can't remember if it was before or after.
Okay. I'm here to start with, MF5. Oh, sorry. The inheritance one. Ms. Armour, I'm going to approach you and hand you a 2-page document that's stapled together, and it's marked on the front as dated exhibit triple M5. And if you could just look at that and tell me if that looks familiar to you.
Yes,
And what do you recognize that as?
that is the agreement they asked me to sign.
Okay, and you did actually sign it, correct?
I did.
Okay. Obviously, this document is not currently signed, but it is the same document that you did sign, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'm going to hand you.
I'm
what's
not
marked
sure,
as
Jennifer,
Triple M6.
what the total
And if
was.
you can do the same thing and look at that and tell me if you recognize that.
Yes.
Okay, and what do you recognize that as?
The agreement Jake asked me to sign about Sophia custody.
Okay. And specifically, if you can read that paragraph to us that pertains to Sophia,
The whole thing, really.
just that paragraph, or, yeah.
This legal written contract is between Edward J. Wagner and Elizabeth A. Freeman, which was my maiden name, on March 2018. This contract is concerning the child of Edward J. Wagner, Sophia M. Wagner, that in the event of a divorce at any time in the future between Edward J. Wagner and Elizabeth A. Freeman, she agrees to not make an attempt to seek any full residential custodial parent rights of Sophia M. Wagner.
And you said something about Angela. Did you discuss these about Angela, or how was Angela involved in that?
I remember her being there and that Jake had said something about she was better at making paperwork than he was, so she kind of either helped create the document or was just helping him in some way.
Helped create the document that has many underlines because of the errors, with the capital O and of, and any time should have been 2 words, not 1. in this
During,
situation.
On your wedding night, did Jake also discuss with you that you should not have contact with your family?
He did.
And tell me about that. What did he say, or about having contact with you?
So, two of my brothers, in their early childhood, had sexually experimented with me when I was quite young. My family didn't have like sex education, so they were both of them under the age of 10, and so the first one had kind of like approached me inappropriately when I was 3 or 4 years old, and then another one at a completely different occasion when I was about 7 years old. And so because of that, Jake asked me to cut contact with my family on my wedding night.
Okay. Contact with your entire family or just those two brothers?
I remember it as my entire family.
Okay.
Perhaps he let me keep contact with, like, I think maybe my mother? I don't remember.
Okay. And was the information you just shared with us something that you had shared with Jake prior to your marriage?
Yes, I had talked about it. I felt it was the honest thing to do.
Okay. And
Bless her heart. So she felt like it was the right thing to do, that, they're getting married and that he should know about her past. And so she was vulnerable and she spoke openly and she spoke honestly with him. And these reprobates used that against her. That's who these people are. It's disgusting. The whole family, just absolute monsters in different ways, but equally monsters.
did you only have one night in that hotel on the day that you got married?
Yes.
Okay. And how much longer after that did you guys go to Missouri?
Jake and his family left for Missouri the following morning. From what I remember, it was George, Jake, and maybe Billy driving down through Canada together, and Angela was driving with children separately, or that's what I had been told. I left Alaska 1 week after them.
Okay. And what was the original plan when they traveled down there?
So the original plan had been for me to drive with Jake and George down through Canada, but my passport did not come through in time because of a name change I had in my teen years following my mother's divorce. So my paperwork took longer to process than was standard.
Okay. And you did not have your passport timely, so what did you do instead?
So I wound up flying by myself to Missouri.
Okay. And can you tell us, when you arrived in Missouri, was everybody there? And by everybody, I mean George, Angela, and Billy, and the two children.
They were.
Okay. And when you got there, where did you go?
We went to a hotel. I was picked up from the airport to the hotel.
And can you tell us, once you got to the hotel, what did you learn about the living arrangements that would be occurring while you were there?
So as soon as I walked into the hotel, there was George, Billy, Angela, the children, Jake, everybody all in one room. And basically walked in and became quite overwhelmed and terrified, so to speak, horrified, and got very scared and left the room and tried to make a call to arrange to leave, basically.
Okay. And can you tell us,
I don't want to interrupt her question, but I do want to comment on this now. An initial impression might be, well, wow, why is she freaking out over them being in one room? Just, that's just where they're sleeping. But it's more than that, because they've actually already, remember, she arrived a week later. So they have been it's not like they just checked into a hotel room for the night, and why get, 40 different, 4 or 5 different hotel rooms? You're just going to sleep there and get back on the road, right? The next morning. So that in that situation, I completely understand. But these people have been there for a week living like this, all in one room, which means there's 2 beds and probably like a couch. Ugh. I would be weirded out too.
Did they indicate where you and Jake would be staying?
In the hotel?
Yeah.
Yes. So Angela and the children were sleeping in one bed. Jake and I were going to sleep in the other bed. There was a recliner in the room, which George was going to sleep in, and Billy was supposed to sleep out in the parking lot in the truck.
Okay. So you were all going to be sleeping in the same room?
Yes.
Okay. And tell us, was this, if you can describe the room to us, was it just one open room? Were there some rooms that went off and had doors that could close or stuff?
It was an open room. The bathroom had a closing door, but that's it.
Okay. And you said you became...
Also, I think that if Billy was sleeping in the parking lot, the truth of the matter is that this was not a hotel, but a motel.
At least uncomfortable with that, and left the room to make a phone call. Where did you go to make the phone call?
So, as I remember it, the
Thank
room we
you,
were staying in
Jen.
was
I
on the bottom
appreciate
floor
that.
of the hotel. So I took the elevator all the way up to the top floor of the hotel, and I was kind of like hiding in a little... There was a recessed door, and I was hiding by the recessed door and crouching down and making a phone call to my brother, asking for help.
Okay. And did anybody come and find you?
Yes, so Jake came out of the room and brought Sophia with him, and he was asking Sophia to help find me. So they rode up the elevator together, and Sophia would kind of like run around each floor. It was one of those hotels where there's like the center well, and so I could see them coming up, like, to find me.
Okay. And did they in fact find you?
They did.
Okay. And what happened once they found you?
So Sophia ran up to me, she grabbed my arm, she's like, Miss Beth, Miss Beth. I don't remember exactly what she said, but approached me cheerfully and kind of pulled me back towards Jake, and then he escorted me back to the hotel room.
Okay. And once you got back to the hotel room, what happened?
So when I got back to the hotel room, everybody was agitated. When I say everybody, I mean George, Angela. I think George was there, because I had a feeling that like, everybody was there. So Angela, George, Jake, they kind of confronted me about having left the room myself, and so it wasn't really safe for me to leave the room by myself because news reporters might be, outside and try to like bother me or get me to talk to them or something like that. And then I would only leave the room with someone with me.
Okay. At that time, did you stay?
In the hotel?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell us how many days did you stay in that hotel?
Between 5 and 7, if I remember.
Okay. Was there a point when one or more of the people there drove back to Ohio?
Of course, I don't know if this is true, but I was told that George and Billy were driving back to Ohio together, that George was going to go and that he was returning afterwards.
While you were there, driving around looking for these things?
I'm not sure if
Until the point that George and Billy departed, is it all of you driving around looking for these things?
I'm not sure if George and Billy were ever there when we were driving around looking for property.
Okay. When George got back, how much longer after that did you leave Missouri?
I feel like it was almost immediately, within a day at least.
Okay. And when that first night that you were there, George slept in the recliner, is that correct? And Billy was out in the parking lot?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall how many nights George and Billy were still there with you in Missouri?
I feel like they only stayed one night in Missouri and then back to Ohio because Billy was going to be living with us in Missouri.
Okay.
Now, this is the part that I have always been curious about. What happened? Why suddenly was Billy all in when they moved to Alaska? Then they have to leave Alaska. They're going to live in Missouri. And then they find out that Missouri is a bust. He never planned to live in Missouri. Billy left Missouri and went right back to Ohio. And I need to know what happened, why that happened. I don't want to guess because I would imagine that murdering 8 people would cause strain in a marriage, particularly if one of those 8 people was one of your good friends. Yes, I believe that would put strain on a marriage, or that would potentially cause some anger, resentment, but I need to know. I need to know exactly. Miss Canepa, please. I know it might be a minute, but whenever Billy's trial, if you can hear this, please hear me. I speak for all of us in this chat right now. When his trial comes, please answer that question for us. We need to know. Even if it doesn't happen during the trial, like, they won't let you get it in, please hold a press conference and address it because we have questions.
And can you tell us, did you ever find property in Missouri?
No, we go from place to place, and Angela would look them over and basically say, "Oh, I don't like this one because
thank
of
you,
XYZ. I don't
Artemis.
like that
Good
one
to
because
see
of
you."
XYZ."
Was there ultimately a decision to go back to Ohio?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell us how that decision came about?
I'm not really sure how the Wagners decided to go back to Ohio, but my knowledge of it was basically they kind of formed a ring around me and were asking.
Objection.
Said she wasn't sure how the Wagners decided.
And now she's describing how she decided.
Well, you're objecting to what? Use the word Wagner?
She's not describing how they decided. She said she didn't know how they decided.
Yeah.
Objection, Billy testified although she was first.
Okay.
All right,
Sit down, sir, because let me explain something to you. And you know this, right? You know this. This is a semantics issue. What she's doing is she's testifying that she doesn't know how the Wagners ultimately arrived at their decision. She wants to make that clear. It's a clarifying statement. Stop it. You know it. I know it. Everybody in the audience knows it. Stop playing with these people out here and objecting for no good reason. Just sit down.
objection. I think that's what she was.
You need to be objecting to your client over there with that leather vest. It's terrible.
Okay.
My knowledge of it was that Angela, Jake, George, to my memory, were in the same room with me. They discussed it with me, how they hadn't been able to find housing in Missouri, and that basically we needed to go back to Ohio because there was somewhere to stay, which we've been in a hotel room for several days now, and basically they were asking me if I was okay with going back to Ohio.
Okay. And how did you respond to that?
I was unhappy about it because Jake had basically promised me we were never going back to Ohio because of the news story, but after being in the hotel for days on end, I thought anything might be better, and so I said, okay.
Okay. And so did you then travel back to Ohio?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And at that time, Billy was already at the Flying W. He did not travel back with you from Missouri to Ohio, is that correct? Okay. When you got back to Ohio, where did you go?
Okay, and this is where we came in yesterday. So now we're going to go forward.
Started making plans to leave, correct?
I want to say 11 p.m. and maybe 2, 3, 4 a.m.
Meetings, you talked about
occasion.
the first items that I provided to you, your Social Security application and the name change of your mother's, were those items that had been
And just like that, we're caught up. Look at us doing big things.
in your personal effects in that bag that you talked about that got lost in transit from Alaska to Missouri and then Ohio?
The name change order was, the marriage certificate was in the bag. The application for the Social Security card was not in that bag, as far as I recall.
Okay. Again, did you give any of those personal items to the Wagners?
Not that I remember. It is possible that Jake had them to transport back and forth between the post office at one point.
Okay.
But I seem to remember being there when that happened, so.
Okay. And you already testified that on your wedding night, Jake asked for all of that some of that information, correct?
Yes,
At that time, did you give him documents or just the information?
just the information.
Okay. Before I move on, I want to follow up on one thing, the double X 11A. Screen. I'm going to hand you what's been marked as State Exhibit double X 11A. It'll show up there too, but if you just tell us, sorry, if you, do you recognize that photo?
Yes, I do.
What do you recognize that as?
The photograph I was shown in Frederica's kitchen.
Okay. The same one where you indicated that looked like Jake's hand holding that weapon?
Yes.
Okay. You've been referring to an individual by the name of...
So I agree with you, Violet, but I need to know I believe that there's a lot of truth to what you say. And that's probably exactly what happened, but I need to know for sure. I need to know, and I need to know exactly what it was, every detail, every minute detail. How do you go from being, like the family that prays, Preys, together, to all of the sudden, you're sleeping over at your mama's house, she's living at her dad's house, where her dad used to live or whatever, it's just messed up. And I need to know how we got there. And I need specifics.
Do you know who she is in relation to the Wagners?
I was told she was Angela's mother.
Okay. And are you aware of who else lived at that residence?
Chris and Randa?
Pardon the interruption, but I would just like the hall monitor Noodle to know that Lil Red has admitted here in writing to being an hour late. Please see that she gets a tardy slip. That is all.
And Granny B.
Okay. And how much interaction did you have with them on a daily basis during that those 3 months that you were there?
I feel like I went to their house about once a day, either to talk to Angela or see the children, because sometimes Granny B would watch the children. Sometimes we ate dinner together. Sometimes they came to our house.
You indicated during these family meetings that you would not be a part of them. Did Jake ever tell you if you would ever become a part of them?
He once told me that if they came to trust me, perhaps I would be invited to the meetings. You know, if I did what they wanted me to and his mom came to trust me, maybe I'd be invited.
Hold on a minute.
And
Hold on. Back the milk truck. Okay. Homeboy, on your wedding night, after doing the deed, the first thing out of his mouth isn't, I love you, that was great, wow, nothing, right? The first, none of that. No. The first word out of his mouth is, I need your phone passcode. I need to sync your phone with my phone. I need your bank account. I need the bank account number. I need the routing number. I need all of your passwords to everything. I need your social security number. And oh, by the way, I'm going to need you to cut off your entire family. Has the unmitigated gall, the audacity to say, maybe if you earn my mother's trust, maybe you'll be invited to the family meetings, aka where we sit around at the kitchen table screaming each other. Bruh, couldn't be me. I'm telling you right now.
And you indicated that you did tell, you did voice your desire to, for you and Jake and Sophia to have your own place to Jake, even after you were back in Ohio, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And at some point, did you also suggest that you get your own place alone?
Yes, so when George and Angela said they weren't comfortable with my being around, I said, well, perhaps it would be better for everybody if I had my own living space, whether that was rent or staying with somebody else or my own house, just to put distance between us. And I remember at one point also mentioning that I was in over my head with all of this legal, political, news-related things, and that perhaps it would be better for everybody if I was secluded somewhere where I wouldn't cause so much trouble.
Oh, you naive, sweet thing, you. There was no way that that was ever going to happen, babe, because the thing of it is it wouldn't matter how much trouble you caused or didn't cause. The fact of the matter is you needed to be, you were a wild card. You were a variable that Angela just could not quite calculate correctly or effectively. And so the best thing to do would have been to keep you right by her side, under her thumb, in constant supervision. Bless her heart. All she was like, she's like, listen, I know I'm trouble. I'm the worst. I'm awful. Maybe you should just get me my own place. You know, just somewhere out of the way, you know, where nobody knows where I'm at. Bless her heart.
Okay. And do you recall if that also became the topic of one of the family meetings? If that was discussed, of you living someplace else?
We did discuss it, yes.
During the time that you were living at that residence, did you ever know individuals to go see an attorney?
I was aware of people going to see an attorney.
Okay.
Yes, Kezchik. Angela Wagner was sentenced to 30 years. Yeah. I know I can feel everybody's energy in the chat. Like, Kez, don't get her started. I'm so angry about that whole hearing. I'm not going to get started, I promise. I'm just going to leave it there. Let's keep going.
And who specifically were you aware of doing that?
Well, Jake once brought me to see an attorney in the town nearby, I forget the name, and I knew that Angela went, and I was of the impression that Angela and George went together on a different occasion.
As none of us can get our heads around that. And you know why? I'm going to tell you why. Here I go. We can't get our heads around it because none of us can get our heads up our own ass that far to think that this is in any way fair or equitable or justice at all. That's why. That's why you're in good company, because none of us can get our heads around that.
Can you tell us, while you and Jake, while you were still living there, and during the, when he was driving and such, would you have conversations with him about the Bible, and would you read passages to him and such during that time?
Yes, so Jake had asked me to read the Bible to him while he was over the road. He said it was because he wanted to get to know God better.
And how often would you say that occurred?
Almost every night.
You indicated that on your wedding night, you had indicated that you should cut off contact with your family. Was there ever a time where he told you what would happen if one of them showed up at your house?
Yes,
And what did he say?
he said that he would kill them.
You indicated earlier, well, I guess I should ask you how you would describe the way that they functioned. I guess you talked to us about the family meetings, you talked about the sharing of finances. From your observations, how did they function, I guess?
Josh?
The basis for knowledge,
Okay.
as who she had interacted with, the greater knowledge before we get into what it was, some was sustainable.
How long did you live with the Wagners?
About 3 months.
Okay. And were you able to observe the way they interacted with each other and the way they functioned as a family?
Yes.
Okay, and can you describe that to us?
So Jake explained to me that, and I observed this also, that they decided periodically who would make decisions. And that at this specific time, it was Angela making the decisions, but he said in the past he had, and at one point George had, and he said that, you know, if I lived with them long enough and became trusted, at some point, I would be making the decisions.
Okay. And can you tell us what kinds of things, did you observe them to do things together? If so, what kinds of things? Both inside the home or outside the home, I guess.
So anytime people went, I say people, anytime George, Angela, Jake, the kids went somewhere, usually someone else would go along. So people didn't usually go anywhere by themselves. The exception being George. George went some places by himself. They went shopping together, ate dinner together most of the time, went to gas station together, went to Granny Wagner's together, went on drives together, went to Walmart together. I don't know what else people do. But.
Okay. And when you said they would go to the flying together, what kinds of things would they do out there?
So typically when we would all go to the Flying W, it would be Angela, Bovine, Sophie, me, Jake, George. We would drive to the Flying W. Sometimes George and Jake would do target practice, and sometimes we would go fishing in the pond. Usually we ate dinner at the Flying W. Sometimes we would look at the horses, the pigs, and we would go out in the land, riding around in four-wheelers, especially down to the certain, like, valley. We went to the certain valley kind of a lot, if I remember.
Okay. And you indicated that sometimes George would do stuff by himself. Do you remember him doing things late at night?
I do. I remember hearing his truck coming kind of at all times of the night. And I would hear him come in. And I say hear him come in because I would hear his voice, or he'd go to his bedroom. Sometimes I would see him coming in and out at night.
Okay. And what time of the night are you talking about?
Like between, I want to say 11 p.m. and maybe 2, 3, 4 a.m.
Okay.
Just depend on the night.
Okay. How many times would you say during that 3-month period that you had alone time with your husband?
If I remember, it was 14.
You remember the number?
That's how many weeks there are.
Okay. So basically once a week. Okay. You know what the children, Sophia and Bull, call Angela?
Should I answer?
Yes.
They called her Amity,
Okay.
or Amity Mommy, one of the two.
You indicated that after the confrontation where Jake and Angela confronted you in the kitchen and you were threatened with what would happen if they ever learned that you had in fact done the things they were suggesting you had done, that you started making plans to leave, correct?
Yes.
And can you tell us how did you go about getting away from that?
So, one thing is I didn't want to take the boat, so I did anything that I was requested to do. The other thing was they still allowed me to walk to the library, so when I would go to the library, I would talk to Jake on the way, and then once I got to the library, I think at this point I had unsynced my phone, so he was not. I unsynced my phone immediately after the threat, so he wasn't able to explicitly see all of my calls at this point. So after I would get to the library, I would pretend like I was, in the library and could talk on the phone, and then I would call people that I knew, asking for help and trying to arrange getting away.
Okay. And were you able to make those arrangements?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell us who ultimately assisted you in getting out of that home?
My father.
Okay. And can you tell us at that time where your father had been living?
At that time, he was living in Texas.
Okay. And did he come to Ohio from Texas to help you?
He did. He flew there.
Okay. And did you have another individual that you knew help you?
I did.
Okay. And you don't need to provide the name, but just generally, who was that person?
My bridesmaid.
Okay. And can you tell us how you indicated that at one point you were talking and upon knowing that George and Angela weren't comfortable with you being in the home, you suggested maybe it'd be good if I just get out. Did you continue to try to have those kinds of conversations so that they would be okay with you leaving, so to speak?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And can you tell us, do you recall when you left there?
It was the first week of July in 2018. I think it was the 6th.
Okay. You had gotten married in March, very end of March 2018, gotten to Ohio maybe early April of 18? Okay, so basically 3 months at home, okay.
And the Wagners were arrested and charged in November of 2018. So to answer Little Red, because I think, hold on a second. Where did it come? Okay. I want to respond to this, that Little Red said, because it's a good point. She says, and law enforcement did nothing to help her. Okay. I think they did later on, but they Jake and George and Billy had all talked about harming law enforcement. And I think that Beth was just really scared for everybody in the situation. And she did reach out after Jake had threatened her um, to a friend from Alaska, and he was law enforcement, and he told her she was overreacting. So I really feel like she didn't think that she actually had anybody who would help her. I don't think she thought she would be believed, because the one time she did go to an outside law enforcement somebody that was her friend, um, he told her, "You're overreacting."
Can you tell us what happened the day that you left?
So the agreement I made with the Wagners was that I was going to stay with my friend to avoid news media, BCI, questioning, everything like that. And then at the same time, I was going to go to college. So Angela and Rita drove me to the Walmart in, I think, Jackson. Is that a town? Sounds familiar. Jackson. They dropped me off in the parking lot. I walked into the Walmart, changed my clothes halfway through the Walmart at a changing station so that I wouldn't look the same, and left out the back through the tire section because I was afraid they were following me. I was concerned, and got into a rented car, took the SIM card out of my phone because I was concerned I was being tracked. My father was there in the car, and we drove down a bunch of side roads and hid the car for a period of time. And then when we knew we weren't being followed, we drove to a restaurant where I switched vehicles. My friend picked me up and took me the rest of the way to Virginia.
So they knew that you...
I mean, if that doesn't say it all, if that does not say the amount of terror that she lived with, I just don't know what would. I really don't. And I really wonder if she is on the witness list for Billy's trial as well.
were leaving, but you didn't want them to be able to follow you and know exactly where you were going.
Correct.
Okay. And you indicated you went to Virginia that day, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell us, have you taken efforts to continue to try to conceal your whereabouts?
I have.
Can you imagine how terrifying it must be for her
At
to
some point,
excuse me, Miss Canepa, I don't want to interrupt you. Can you imagine how scared she must be sitting in that courtroom right now, being back in Ohio, period, right? But then also now having to sit in that courtroom with George. I mean, it's not that big of a courtroom. They're not that far apart from each other. I can't imagine. Poor girl.
after you left that residence, well, if you can tell us, did you continue to have contact with Jake or any members of his family after that day that you left?
I seem to remember sending Jake maybe 1 or 2 messages after I arrived, hoping that if I said I was safe and had arrived safely, that would postpone any kind of following or hounding.
Okay. And can you tell us, at some point after you had left, were you contacted by BCI?
I was.
Okay. And did you talk to them?
I did.
Okay. And did you also agree to do a controlled call with Jake? Okay. And do you recall anything of consequence coming out of that conversation?
I was not aware of anything consequential coming from it.
Okay. Do you recall anything that you talked about?
We talked about Sophia's health, how she was, what their plans were, I think. He asked me where I was. I didn't let him know where I was. And I remember being very angry about how disturbed Sophia had been while I was living with them, and I remember saying, like, well, if she's this stressed and anxious, or if you are concerned about her well-being, you should at least take her to the doctor. I remember that in the conversation.
And I want to show you just a couple of photos. States that triple M roll. And this does have images of minors in it, so if you could not.
I would imagine that Angela only cared in that she was worried about law enforcement talking to her. I think that's the extent to which her care went. I don't think she actually cared about this girl. I don't think she liked this girl. I think that only feelings that she might have had were not actual concern for Beth, but concern for what Beth might tell people.
And can you tell us if you recognize the people in that photo?
I do.
And who do you recognize those as?
Jake, Sophia, Lola, and myself.
Okay. And then same thing for this photo. State exhibit triple M 13. Again, if you could tell us if you recognize the people in that photograph.
Jake, George, Angela, Billy, Sophia, and Lola.
Okay. And where were those photos taken?
Looks like a tree on Granny Wagner's property.
Okay.
So Chick Tracy says, I remember when these crimes happened, but I haven't followed since. I have a lot of catching up to do. That's what this is, what we're doing is at some point this year, and I would suspect it's going to be sooner rather than later. I'm thinking maybe February or March. It might even be the end of January. Who knows? But I'm thinking at some point Billy's trial is going to take place, and I wanted to do a deep dive ahead of that trial. Violet asks, any word on when Billy goes to trial? No, because the appellate court has not made a decision that I'm aware of yet. I will check after I get off of here tonight, but they have not made a decision that I'm aware of yet on two things that are pending before them. One of them is the objection by a family member to a change of venue, and the other is Judge Hine making the decision to remove the death penalty from potential punishments that Billy could receive. So there we go.
And that would have been sometime during the 3 months that you were living with them, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Irene says, oh, I don't think she cared. I just wonder if she got worried Beth would talk. Oh, yeah, I think that's all she cared about, honestly. I don't think she cared about anything else.
And Ms. Armour, can you tell us if you ultimately got divorced from Jake Wagner?
I did.
Okay. And was that something that you initiated?
It was.
Ms. Armour, you indicated that when you were at the Flying W around the kitchen table and they were showing you that photograph and then had that reaction, that one of the things that they said was that BCI could be listening, correct?
Oh, yes, yes.
Was that the only time that they talked about the fear of possibly being listened to?
No, they seemed, multiple comments were made at home, When I say at home, I mean in the house next to Rita Newcomb's, about BCI listening, or even outside, they would make comments about BCI listening, and that we needed to be careful what we were saying because BCI might be listening.
All right, any other questions for this witness at this time, Your Honor?
Does the defense wish to cross-examine now or after the lunch break?
I think it's time for lunch.
So we will take a lunch recess. The jury will assemble at the jury room. Let's make it 1:30, run around the office with it. While you're on this break, you're not to discuss this case among yourselves or with anyone else. You're not to permit anyone to discuss this case with you.
Now,
I just gifted 5 memberships to the chat, and you know what I've been seeing, and I don't have it, and I wonder why. But there's other channels have like a super chat goal or something like that, and I don't have that. Wonder why I don't have that. I probably wouldn't use it, but I still would like to have the option. All right, here we go.
Ms. Armour, your first name is Elizabeth, correct?
Yes,
All right. And did you go by Beth when you were dating Jake and then married to him?
yes, my father named me after my aunt, whose name is Beth Ann, and so I had that times gone by nickname, Beth Ann.
Beth Ann, okay. So if George, if anybody in the Wagner family referred to you as Beth or Beth Ann, that's the name that you went by?
Yes,
Okay. So as I understand it, you grew up in Texas, is that right?
no, no.
Okay, where did you grow up?
The first 6 years of my life were split between Texas, Oklahoma, and New York, and from that point onward, Tennessee.
Okay. And
I'm not a brand. Do I have to be a brand to have it? I don't have it. I mean, I'm not a brand, no,
and how old were you when you left Tennessee?
21.
Okay, so Texas, Oklahoma, and New York, did you say?
Yes.
And what age span was
Oh,
that?
I do have it.
New York, infancy. Oklahoma, age 3 to 4.
Okay.
Texas, 4 until 6 in one location, and then in another location, 6 until 13.
Okay. And then you moved to Tennessee,
Yes,
and you stayed there till you were 21,
yes.
and then at that point you moved up to Alaska.
Moved to Texas briefly for a few months, and then to Alaska.
Okay. Do you know why your family moved so often when you were young?
My father was in the military.
That explains it. Okay. So you were a child of the military, so to speak,
To a degree.
to a degree. Okay. And are you employed right now?
Yes,
What type of work do you do?
service work.
Okay. I also understand that you like to make videos and post them on the internet. Is that accurate?
I have posted videos. I would not say that I particularly like it per se.
Okay, you've done it several times, right?
I have.
All right. And what topics do you discuss in these, or these videos? I'm sorry.
Typically Christianity.
Have you
Oh my
talked about
God, I just did it.
experiences
Let me
that-
change it then, Nate.
Once or twice,
Let me
I
see.
believe
How
so.
do I get it out of here?
And please correct me if I say anything wrong, but you seem to be a very religious woman. Is that fair to say?
That's a fair statement.
And you've had this.
He removed
religious-
it. I didn't know
I'm sure about
subs
personal
didn't
beliefs,
like
but
it.
You've been a very religious person most of your life. Is that fair to say?
Oh, thank you, Chick Tracy. I appreciate that, babe. Thank you very much. So, Chick asks, did she get the time because she killed somebody, or was it guilt by association? She got that time because it was her plan. She's one that it was her idea. She went along, she was there every step of the way doing all the planning, but she didn't actually unalive anybody. So that's why Angela got that. I removed that goal. No, if subs don't like it, I'm not going to do something the subs don't like. So I just took it away. I just wanted to see if I had it. All right, here you go.
I would say from the age 22 until now.
22 until now, okay. What about your childhood? I believe you said you were raised at least for a period of time in the Amish or Mennonite community, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, where was that? Which state were you?
So from the age of 6 until 13, my family were in very close relationship with a Amish Mennonite family. And then after that point, we moved to Tennessee, where my family lived in a Old Order Mennonite community.
Okay, and explain to someone like me who unfortunately doesn't know a lot about the Mennonite community, what is that experience like?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, I can tell you, get the crayons, Beth, because just explaining it to him, I really don't feel like he's going to get it. And I do think he's going to use it against you. So I'm proud of you, though. Make him ask you specifically. Tell him. That's right.
Well, could you describe your daily activities in the Mennonite community?
Gardening, baking, making clothing, animal husbandry,
All right, do you-
agricultural.
Okay, is it kind of a rural upbringing?
Yes.
All right. Kind of a tight-knit?
Oh, no, you're fine,
community,
Kez.
Is that fair to say?
I would say the actual Amish Mennonite community is tight-knit.
Okay, is that what you experienced?
Yes.
And so your your educational background was kind of limited in that situation. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And can you just describe what your educational background was at that point in time?
And the point that I was in Tennessee,
Yes.
I was home educated.
And who did the homeschooling?
My mother.
Okay.
Yeah, she obviously did actual homeschooling, unlike your client's mother, who educated her sons in spotting a victim and other crimes.
But you wanted further education, correct?
Yes.
All right. And that eventually led you to Alaska. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but with respect to your religious beliefs, you've kind of looked at different types or different types of faith throughout your life.
I don't think it's rude, Little Red, at all. But I think what it is with Beth is she is incredibly, incredibly sheltered. She was homeschooled, and then when they started living with the Amish Mennonite community, that's it's a very tight knit community, and it's an even more sheltered existence. And then when she actually got out on her quote unquote own, she moved from Tennessee to Alaska and moved in with people from the community, from that she knew, from the Amish Mennonite community that attended this church. So she moved in with the pastor of the church, him and his family, and rented a room from them. So she's not even at this point, which would be like 4 years after she's left the Wagner family, she's not incredibly experienced in the world. And I think she's really timid and I just think really naive. She's like a little, that's what she knows of life. And then she moves in with the devil's rejects,
Is that fair to say?
That is true.
And could you just explain that briefly?
I spent a period of my life reading books I could get my hands on various types of religion, ranging from Eastern religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Orthodoxy, Catholicism, Lutheranism, history of the churches in general in the world, I would say.
You're very much a bookworm, as I understand.
I do like to read.
Okay. And that's one of the things you did when you moved to Ohio. You like to go to the library and do various things, but reading books, right?
Yes.
Have you participated in any of those religions that you just discussed?
So, at the time of the trial, which was 2018 or 2022, she's 29 years old, I believe is what she said. So she's,
I have not.
Okay. Now, as I understand it, you met Jake in Alaska, I believe it was in 2017. Do I have that right?
Yes,
All right. And you had already lived in Alaska for about 1 year, is that correct?
I don't believe that's correct.
Okay. How long had you lived in Alaska before you met Jake, approximately?
From November of 2016 until June of 2017, I believe it was, until I met him. So a period of months.
A period of months, okay. And you met him at a church in the Kenai Peninsula, correct?
Yes.
All right. And did you go to that church alone or with your friends, or how was it you picked that particular church?
I went to that church with my friends.
Okay, did they know about it and say, hey, why don't you come along with us, or how did that work?
Because I was renting a room with them, it was convenient for me to attend church with them.
Sure. And is that church, it sounds like it's something you enjoyed.
It wasn't unenjoyable.
All right. I mean, you participated in various activities.
I enjoyed the choir.
You enjoyed the choir, right? And it sounds like you helped out in the nursery, is that right?
I enjoyed working with children, yes.
Sure, sure. And so it was there that you and Jake happened to meet each other.
Yes,
And Jake was a frequent attendee of the church, is that fair to say?
at that time.
Yeah, at that time. So we're talking June of 2017 and going forward, he was a frequent attendee at the church, correct?
Yes,
All right, and I believe you said he arrived with his mother and perhaps Sophie?
it was more than just his mother and Sophie.
Okay, but I think you said the first time you saw him.
I
you thought
think so,
Jake
Neat
and
Noodle, I
Angela,
do.
his
I think
mother,
that's
were a
about
couple
right.
coming in, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And so you would see Jake at the church much more often than you would see George at the church, is that fair to say?
Yes,
George wasn't really there but once, maybe, I think you said?
I believe I said once or twice.
Once or twice?
Yeah,
And
George
that would
ain't
be
much.
from June
Look,
of 17 until you
look. She's not up there to testify about all of the family. I mean, look, she's up there to testify about the family dynamics and the things that she was told and the things that she experienced. Now, just because when she and Jake first got together and Jake was hanging out at the church and George wasn't much for religifying, doesn't mean that when they got back to Ohio that she can't possibly, testify about behaviors that George exhibited on the times that she did see him. It's true. They were not best buds. They were not each other's confidants or anything like that. He didn't like her and she didn't particularly care for him, but she saw some things. Okay. I know you're trying to distance your client, and make it as if this woman doesn't know what she's talking about, but it's coming across as condescending and I don't like it or appreciate it. That's all.
left the following year after the marriage, correct?
Yes,
All right. And so the church would have different activities that you and Jake would participate in, right?
yes,
All right. And that's the way you got to know each other initially.
partially.
Partially. Was there another way?
Dating.
Dating, right. You met there and then he would ask you out on dates, and I think you described you would have meals together, you would take walks together, you would have dates, get to know each other. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And so at what point did you think the relationship was turning pretty serious? Given that you met in June of 2017.
This is how, hold on a second. It was so windy here Sunday night. So windy. Now it's just freaking cold. You stay safe, Artemis.
I believe there's a little bit of a cultural difference here between myself and other people. So in the culture I grew up in, which is Amish Mennonite, people often meet through church and often will become engaged within a period of 4 to 6 months. So at about the 6-month period, I was almost expecting an engagement. And so from that point onward, I considered it pretty serious.
Okay, fair enough. Now, during this time you were dating Jake, did you ever visit his family at the home they had there in Alaska?
I only
Yes.
recall visiting the home twice.
She already
Can you tell us-
testified.
Do you remember the first time approximately? Or what the event was or anything?
Excuse me, Mr. Defense Attorney Matt Guy, did you listen to her testimony or are you asking this because you want her to repeat it so that you can catch her in something? Where are you going with this, sir?
It was around the time Jake asked me to marry him, and I went and met the family at their home.
Okay. And was there a dinner, or was it just stopping by to say hello, or?
We didn't have dinner that I recall. I believe it was stopping by to say hello.
All right. And
Ooh, it's cold where you are too, Lil Red. I'm sorry, babe. We're supposed to get like 8 to 12 inches of snow. I'm not ready. Like, come on, Texas. Now I know you have crazy weather and everything. Like, I'm from here. I get it. But couldn't you have just like eased a girl back into it? I'm from come on.
had you ever talked to any of his family members on the phone or through Facebook or anything like that before that first meeting?
Also, good to see you, Rochelle.
I don't
Queen of
know.
Hearts,
It's possible that
hey.
we did, but I don't.
Nothing sticks in
Nothing sticks in my mind.
Okay. And so, what was the second occasion, if you remember?
When they were packing up to move down to Missouri.
Okay. So the first time was when Jake kind of introduced you to the family, so to speak, and the second time was when literally the Wagners were moving from Alaska to Missouri.
That I remember.
Okay. Those are the two times. Okay.
Moving,
Now-
fleeing, tomato.
With respect to the wedding, I think you said that you got married at a friend's home, right?
Yes.
Is that the friend that you were living with at the time?
No. No.
It was somebody else, okay. But a friend that's a former law enforcement officer, do I have this right, is the one who conducted the ceremony?
Yes, because he's also has been a pastor at times.
Of course, he does more than one thing. Did you ever enter into any counseling before the marriage that sometimes people enter into?
Oh, she is, Rachel, and I cannot wait to see. I'm so excited. And it's cold, but I don't care because I'm that part about it. I don't care. I just want to see her. I just want to see her in the snow.
Before they get married?
Yes.
All right. Was it ever recommended to you that perhaps you shouldn't marry Jake?
No.
That was never recommended to you by anybody?
Not that I remember.
Fair enough. Now, it seems, please correct me if I say anything wrong here, but have you suffered a brain injury at some point?
Not a brain injury.
Okay.
Here we go.
Brain damage.
I'm sorry, brain damage. Can you explain that, what the circumstances were? I don't mean to pry too much, but just generally what the circumstances were?
So, according to my neurosurgeon, neuro doctor, I suffered sudden, unprecedented cellular death in my right prefrontal cortex.
Your right prefrontal cortex.
Yes.
So that's the right front part of your brain?
Yes.
All right. And do you know when that took place?
January of 2020.
January of 2020?
Yes.
And I assume that was quite a traumatic event.
I think trauma is the wrong word for that.
Okay, what is the correct word?
So a brain injury would have trauma. Brain damage does not have trauma.
Okay. Did it affect your ability to remember things?
Only names a little bit, but that's come back.
Okay. You're recovering from it.
Yes.
It was
Are
sudden.
you
I don't
on
know what it
medication or
was.
Therapy or anything like that?
No, there was no medication or therapy needed.
Okay. Were you hospitalized for this brain damage?
I was not, because it was at the very beginning of COVID-19. The hospital considered it to be safer for me to recover at home.
So let me move on. You
Yeah,
moved to
please
Alaska
move on.
and you meet Jake, and he proposes to you, and you accept, correct?
Correct.
And you get married at a friend's house, and you don't have a honeymoon, but you do. Is there a reception or like a celebration at a restaurant or anything like that?
No.
So what do you do immediately after the wedding?
Jake and I went to the hotel.
Okay, so you had a room in Alaska?
We rented a room in a hotel
Okay. Was that for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days?
one night.
1 night. And then how quickly after that did you, did the Wagners leave from Missouri?
It was my understanding that they left the following morning.
Okay, so you had the wedding, you and
Irene, okay, so if that's what it sounds like to you, and listen, I know have some medical knowledge, but not like that. During the pandemic, would they have suggested that it would be safer for her to recover at home? Does that sound right to you? No, I don't think he is, Artemis, and I don't think it applies because um, because of the circumstances, he can bring it up if she has an issue with memory. Okay. All right. Thank you, Irene. Irene's answered me yes to my question. So, yeah. Okay. All right. That makes sense. All right. So maybe I wonder what happened. Poor thing.
Jake go to a hotel, and then the next morning, George and the rest of his family leave from Missouri, correct?
That's my understanding.
That's your understanding. And you did not leave with them, obviously. You're at the hotel with Jake, right?
He brought me home.
He brought you home. But the plan was for you to fly to Missouri because you had a problem with your passport. Is that right?
That was the plan we resolved on.
Okay. Maybe not the first plan, but that was the final plan.
Yes.
Okay. And so when you were in Alaska and Jake and George and the rest of the family were up there, George and Jake had jobs, right?
I know Jake had a job. I'm unsure about George.
Okay. What type of job did Jake have?
He worked at a auto shop.
And do you know whether George worked at the same place with him?
I believe he mentioned something like that.
Okay. And was it your understanding that when the Wagners were living in Alaska, that Jake and George were the primary breadwinners, so to speak?
It was my understanding that Jake was. I'm not sure about George.
All right. Did you know whether Angela had a job in Alaska?
I don't know.
You weren't really around George in Alaska very much, were you?
No.
You didn't really know him at all in Alaska, is that fair to say?
Other than at church.
That once or twice you saw him at church?
Yeah.
And did you have long conversations with him at the church?
No.
All right. So you met him at the church once or twice. You were introduced to him after Jake had proposed to you, and then you helped back. That's kind of the extent of your contact with George when you were in Alaska. Is that fair?
Fair enough.
Okay. And do you know why the Wagners were moving from Alaska to Missouri?
I was told that it was for farming purposes, to purchase a farm and farm in Missouri.
Okay, were you aware that Jake and George had been laid off their jobs in Alaska?
That does not ring a bell.
That does not ring a bell. You lived in Alaska for how long?
About a year.
About a year or so. It's my understanding that Alaska is a very expensive place to live. Would you agree with that?
I would agree.
Yeah, everything seems to be more expensive there. Is that right?
Yes.
And if someone doesn't have a job or doesn't have a full-time job, that could make living there more difficult, correct?
Yes.
Were you
I mean,
aware-
why are you speaking to her like this? I don't. The tone of condescension. Look, when you don't have a job, so you don't have an income, it's expensive to live anywhere because everywhere costs money. So when you have $0, everything is expensive. Like, it's just what are you doing?
aware that Jake and George had been pursuing a job in Missouri, driving a truck for R&L. Were you aware of that or not?
I was where they were pursuing the job trucking. I wasn't sure about the details of it being R&L.
Okay, so moving from Alaska to Missouri, they were pursuing this truck driving opportunity.
Yes.
And so the Wagners leave Alaska the morning after your wedding, and they're driving to Missouri, correct? Now, speaking of the family gathering, you identified a couple photos earlier.
I skipped ahead because this doesn't really have anything to do with anything. We heard what we needed to hear.
You identified
He's not going to be able to take the win from her sales.
This is a photo showing this to you, if I may, Judge. You recognize that photo, correct?
Yes.
All right, that's you, Jake, and the two children, correct?
Yes.
And that's in the summer of, well, that's after you're married, right?
2018.
2018, that's in Ohio, right?
Yes.
And that's out at the Flying W, am I correct? Do you
It
remember?
looks like the Flying W. I don't remember exactly where the picture was taken.
All right. And so certainly the Flying W was kind of the Wagner family homestead, right?
I assume so.
Okay.
She
How many
doesn't-
times were you there, do you remember?
Almost every weekend.
Almost every weekend. It's a common place for the
She doesn't know these people like that. Stop it.
Wagner family together, right?
Yes.
They would fish there, is that right?
Yes.
Perhaps hunt?
I never saw them hunting there.
Okay. And the children certainly had a lot of room to run around and play, right?
Yes.
And you seem to be pretty happy in that photo. Is that accurate?
It's a photo. People smile in photos.
There you go. Tell
You're in
him.
that photo, right?
Yes.
Were you happy at that time?
Probably not.
I don't remember if I was particularly happy in that particular photo.
There's really nowhere he can go with this, okay? Other than to try and establish that she doesn't know his client. That, she had confrontations, altercations with Jake. She had confrontations and altercations and arguments with Angela, but that George pretty much stayed out of the way, that she doesn't know him. And that's really all that he can establish. Lil Red, she testified at the beginning that she has none living. So she was asked, do you have any children? And she said none living. So no. So sad. I don't know where he's going with this either. He doesn't really do much. It's not a real effective cross. I mean, people smile in photographs.
Now, when you lived in South Webster, you had this, some terrible experience. Basically, Angela accusing you of sexually assaulting Sophie. Is that right?
That's correct.
And Jake brought this to your attention.
Yes, with Angela in the room.
With Angela in the room, right? And so you must have been horrified by this.
Yes.
And that caused you a great amount of concern as to what the heck am I doing living with these people if they think I'm abusing a child?
Yes.
And so that's when you started to plan that maybe this marriage just isn't going to work out.
When they threatened to murder me, that was when I came to understand that the marriage was not going to work out.
Okay, and it was Jake who threatened to murder you, right?
Jake threatened that he and his extended family would murder me.
Right, but he's the one that spoke the words, right?
He did.
And that caused you to make a telephone call to the family you lived with in Alaska a short time before, right?
Yes.
All right, and you're like, help me here. My life has just been threatened. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, and Jake was in the room when that call was made?
He was not.
Okay, did you say earlier that you handed the phone to him so your friend in Alaska to talk to him?
Yes, I brought the phone to him.
You brought the phone to him. Okay, but he was, what, in the next room, perhaps?
He was outside.
He was outside. All right, and so your friend in Alaska that you trusted talked to Jake, and then, once again, talked to you, and kind of said, look, calm down, you're over-exaggerating. Is that fair to say or not?
He thought that I had misunderstood the situation and said that I needed to calm down, basically.
Okay, and that's obviously a friend that you cared for greatly.
I trusted him at that time.
Yeah, she trusted him. He performed the wedding. You lived with his family, correct?
And
A former law enforcement officer.
Yes.
And you like to read books, and you like to write down your thoughts. And this is something that nobody else in the Wagner family cared for. Is that right?
I didn't observe any of them caring to read or write.
And you wrote about Angela in this journal you kept, correct?
Yes.
And you shared some of that with us earlier, right?
Yes.
And looking at MM3, Judge, if I may. This is one page out of your journal, right?
Yes.
All right, I think you read this earlier, so I'm not going to ask you to repeat that reading test. But it seems very clear that you thought Angela was a manipulator. Is that right?
Yes.
That she used the children, when I say the children, Sophie, Bovine, she used them against Jake and George. Is that your understanding?
That was my observation.
That was your observation.
Okay. So now where he's going with this is, I know you didn't know George real great, but would you agree that Angela is horrible? Of course she agrees that Angela is horrible. Angela is horrible.
And that's living there for about 3 months or so.
Yes.
All right. And you came to that conclusion pretty quickly, is that fair to say?
Yes.
There was a lot of yelling and screaming in that house when George and Jake and Angela and Billy were together, or George, Jake, and Angela, there was a lot of yelling and screaming, right?
Yes.
Top of their lungs, right?
Yes. Although I'm not sure how high their lungs can go.
But it was uncomfortable, fair to say?
Yes.
Are you going to ask the next question today, or what's up, bruh?
I'm not sure I was aware he was quote unquote looking for a wife in Alaska.
You came to that conclusion later on, perhaps?
He was-
For a wife when he was up in Alaska.
So what happens when you try to skip?
It's my understanding that you came to the conclusion that Jake was looking for a wife when he was up in Alaska. Is that fair to say?
I'm not sure I was aware he was quote unquote looking for a wife in Alaska.
You came to that conclusion later on, perhaps?
I don't remember making that conclusion.
Okay. But he was certainly someone who went to church often in Alaska, correct?
He went to church often while I was there.
Well, you were there. When you returned to Ohio, did he go to church very often?
Never.
How about you,
I did not. I was requested not to
by the way?
by the Wagners.
So they were trying to stay out of the limelight, so to speak, when they were back in Ohio, speaking about Angela and Jake, right?
Not just Angela and Jake. They all were trying to stay out of the limelight.
There was a lot of media attention because this case had been pending for 2 years or more at that point in time, and you knew there was a lot of media attention on the Wagners as suspects at that point in time, right?
I was told there was a lot of media attention on them. I never saw.
You never followed the media.
Yes.
All right. But certainly, when you were in Alaska, even the pastor of the church, I think, brought it to the congregation's attention that there was a lot of media attention, even in Alaska, about the Wagner family and that them being suspects, and that even the people in Alaska should just welcome them into the community. Is that right?
Yes, basically.
Okay. And you gave some stock in that, right?
Can you clarify that? Gave some stock?
Sure, you gave some credence to what the pastor said there.
Yes.
And, I mean, you were concerned enough to have your friend, that was the former law enforcement officer, to kind of do some background checking on all this, right?
I don't remember asking him to do background checking.
Okay, did you ask his opinion?
I did ask his opinion.
All right, and so you continued this relationship and Jake in part based on his opinion that you received.
Yes.
I mean, people have opinions. Everybody has them, but they can also be wrong. She got bad advice. I think that's well established. These people are all monsters. The end.
And so after you left Ohio,
Julia, that is a perfectly valid excuse for being late. So you are excused. Your tardiness is excused. Welcome. Glad to have you.
you went with your friend out of state, right?
I went out of state and met my friend.
Yeah, and you've continued to live wherever you're living. You don't want to tell us where you're living, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you eventually filed for divorce from Jake, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you've had no contact with George, certainly since you left Ohio. Is that fair?
Correct.
Yes, counselor, we've established they're not friends. The friendship door was never opened. It remained closed the entire time. It's still closed. We got
It's my
it.
understanding that you did not want to talk to George's defense lawyers before today. Is that right?
That's correct.
And why is that?
Did you suck?
Because the Wagners terrified me.
They terrify you. So you think the lawyers would terrify you as well?
Do you like to discuss things with people who terrify you?
Understood. But you did not volunteer or agree to discuss anything you know with the defense lawyers before today?
Correct.
Okay. And did you get your college education?
I began it twice.
Okay, so you're still working on that.
Yes.
Good for you. And you're working now?
Yes,
so
Rachel,
you're doing
the
better?
kid, the adult.
Yes.
Recovering from your unfortunate medical situation?
Yes.
What's happening with the
When you
camera?
left Ohio back in
Hold on a minute.
2018, you were escaping from
Did y'all notice that the camera every once in a while shakes? Like, what's going on in that courtroom? Are they shaking you, camera operator person? What's happening?
Angela as much as anybody. Is that fair to say?
Angela, Jake, George, and Billy is who I believe myself to be escaping from,
Right. And Billy was out at the Flying W, right?
as far as I knew.
Would you describe Jake as being impulsive at times?
I would describe Jake and all the Wagners as being impulsive.
Did Jake think Jake discussed his religious beliefs with you, right?
He did.
And he thought he was going to heaven when you knew him, right?
He seemed to think so.
And he lied to you about his involvement in this case, right?
He did.
And so did Angela, right?
She did, as far as I know.
You were either duped or fooled by Jake when you lived in Alaska. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
Maybe so, Kez. Maybe so.
I can have just a moment here.
I feel like this just a moment is going to turn into nothing. It is. People who say they're going to take just a moment don't usually take all their materials back to the table with them. So this is a good indication that the testimony is over. So, oh, we got one more question. All right, ask your question, counselor. Let's
Just a couple
go.
of questions about when BCI officers were interviewing you in Virginia. So that would have been in July of 2018, after you left Ohio.
Hey, boss lady, good to see you, babe.
They asked you about George. Now, in particular, they asked you when George specifically would talk about what he would do, would he say that he would, what would he say that he was going to do to those people if he got his hands on them? I believe your response was, he would say things like, if I had my way.
Hold on a minute before he starts this. This is so infuriating to me because he's literally reading the transcript. So you're reading his answer, bruh. You don't believe his response to be. That is what his response is. Stop it.
We wouldn't be
Sorry.
hiding out like this. We would be storming DeWine's office, punching him in the nose. You know, just for us. And the agent asked you, is that what you perceived them to be? You didn't perceive them to be viable threats, you thought? And your answer was, I thought they're just bluffs, just like blowing off steam. Do you recall that?
I do recall that interview.
Thank you very much. I don't think I have any other questions.
Wow. I don't know if you guys could hear that, but Mac wants out of the room. And we all know how Mac can be when he wants something. So he has taken to, he's got the puffiest paws I've ever seen on a cat in my life, but he sticks them underneath the door. And it almost sounds like, it doesn't sound like he has them under the door. It sounds like he's headbutting the door. He's so rude. Sorry about that little interruption from Mac. Mac says hi, by the way, and hopes you guys are all doing fantastic and have had a fabulous new year. He's decided to start the new year off by choosing violence and destruction. So that's about all there is to her testimony. Now, oh, you're so welcome, Ginger. I appreciate you guys being here so much. Yes, at least he wasn't fumbling through stacks of paper like Owens. Yes, Irene. Yeah, not to mention fumbling around with stacks of paper in the never-ending, never reaching a point closing argument. That was the worst. Irene says my cat does that if I lock her out of the bathroom. Man, I haven't gone to the bathroom by myself since 1995. Yeah. So either the kids were, at the door or putting their heads, little faces. I haven't gone to the bathroom by myself in peace since 1995. And then after the kids, Mac sits in there with me. Alice gives me my privacy somewhat, but Mac doesn't. He likes to be right where I am all the time. So, okay, that finishes up the family dynamics as far as that goes, like the actual eyewitnesses. Okay. Now, I want to ask you guys what you think we should do next. Do you guys want me to play the phone calls that took place between Jake, George, and Angela? Different variants of that. Some of them are between George and Jake. Some of them are between George and Angela. Some of them are between Jake and Angela. Some of them are between George and Angela, but Jake is in the background raising Cain. Do you guys think that would be like the next appropriate place to go? And then we should then talk about the actual crime itself. Because we can do it like that if you want. We can do the phone calls, the recorded, intercepted phone calls. I forget what they call them in this case. Okay, so let's do that next. And then after we do the phone calls, because I think that they're played at different points during the trial. So that'll give me something to do. I'll have to get all the time. It's no big deal. I'm just thinking out loud. You guys know how I roll. So I'll find all of them and play them for you. Also, I want you guys to know tomorrow is the 8th, January 10th. I plan to premiere Sid and Nancy Something Else. So it'll only be in Patreon. It has to be in Patreon. I know for a fact that the stuff that I'm going to put in there has everything that YouTube is like, near. So if you want to hear it, if it's something that you're interested in, I hope that you guys join my Patreon. I have only one level. It's $5. Yes, I think that's the plan. The boss lady, I think you're welcome for covering this case. Thank you for being here, all of you guys. Yes, I think we're going to do the phone calls and then we'll do the case discussion. So anyway, my Patreon has a $5 level, and after I do the documentary that I want to do, because the book that I want to read is about Nancy, and it's written by her mother. And if I feel like if I just read that book for Bedtime Books with Bendy and I don't give you guys the backstory, like some of the stuff that happens kind of won't make sense. So I feel like and also understanding the backstory, you have to understand the backstory to know why Deborah wrote the book in the first place. So Patricia, I'm not going to tell you how I feel, but I read that book. Actually, you know what? If I really think about it now, I also want you guys to be on the lookout too. Alex Erickson interviewed me for her A Conversation With series, and she's going to be premiering it this week. And we were talking about true crime, and she asked me some stuff about like what my first case was. And you know what? I actually forgot that I read this book in 7th grade. And so if I really were to think about it, that would have been my first true crime, is reading this book. So it's actually a really, really good book. And it really gives you, I don't think that I think Nancy Spungen is a very misunderstood person. And I'm going to leave it there, but I will go through all of that. And I put together all the things. So I'm going to do that. And then after that premieres, I'll start doing my weekly episodes of Bedtime Books with Bendy, which is just basically where I read a chapter at a time and put it to like, beach, like waves or gentle rain or something like that. So you can listen to it while you go to sleep. And I upload those every Wednesday on Patreon. So, and there's other stuff that I'm going to start doing in Patreon as well. So, if you would, if you're interested, please join. But that, yeah, can you guys hear Mac? Yeah, he's my little talker. What, Stuart? I don't know if he'll do it. Sometimes if I talk to him like Stuart's mom from Mad TV, what does Mama say? Stuart? Sometimes he'll talk back. Sometimes he won't. But anyway, that's just a little game that I play with the cat. You guys don't need to know about that. Welcome to Inside Bendy's Brain. Anyway, I want to thank you guys all so very much for being here. I appreciate it very, very much. If you have not done so, please give a girl a thumbs up or a thumbs down, whatever you feel I deserve. It's, I leave it to your discretion, your capable hands. Do it for the algorithm, as it were. And I will be back tomorrow night with the phone call, with the wiretaps. All right. So you guys have a great rest of your night and stay bundled up for those of you guys that are experiencing these wintry conditions. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye.
Cause it's Friday, you ain't got no job, and you ain't got shit to do. Well, fuck you.
No malicious intent or effort was towards it.
No malicious. Finish her!
Minutes later.
We all do a little math sometimes.
And you know this, man.